Hello, everyone. You are listening to SheLeads with Carly. I'm your host, Carly Malatsky, and my guest today is Tatyana Mamut. Tatyana is now the Senior Vice President and General Manager at Pendo.io Adopt, which focuses on driving adoption, transformation, and the future of the digital workspace. Prior to Pendo, though, Tatyana started her career in brand planning, user experience and design, and of course, dove deeply into product management. She worked at top companies including IDEO, Salesforce, Amazon Web Services as a director of product management, and Nextdoor, a social networking service for neighborhoods, where she was a chief product officer. Beyond her leadership experience and wealth of product knowledge, Tatyana is also an advisor and board member to many companies, including Braintrust, User Testing, and Sauce Labs. So, Tatyana, I am so excited to have you on the show. How is everything? Thank you for joining.
Everything's great. Really enjoying the summer so far and excited to talk to you, Carly.
Amazing. So first, set the scene. Where are you in the world? Are you working from home, in the office? What's the work situation going?
So right now I am actually in New York with family. I grew up in and around New York City, and my husband has family here as well. So we are, entertaining our children with some family right now. I have to admit, I do love going into an office. So even though I spend still many of my days working from home, I really look forward to the day that I can go back and see a lot of people in the office, whiteboard with people again, and have that social interaction. I'm a very sort of social animal and social creature, and I do still believe that innovation happens best when people are face to face and we can kind of feel each other's energy.
Yeah, I feel that. I agree.
Yeah.
So what I like to do is I want to go all the way back to the beginning. You graduated from Amherst with a degree in economics.
hmm
So walk me through this. At this point in your life, what were you imagining your career? Were you, all the way in econ, finance? How were you imagining your career at this stage in your life?
Yeah. So, one thing I will mention, I am a refugee from the Soviet Union. In my family, I was sort of the black sheep of the family because, my mother's an engineer, my father's an engineer, my grandmother's an engineer, my aunt's an engineer. My brother, who's much younger than me,
Wow.
also turned out to be an engineer. And so I come from a very long line of, very accomplished engineers, and very much so engineering women. Like my grandmother was a top engineer in the Soviet Union. She ran a large factory. She was
Wow.
essentially like the equivalent of a major CTO in Silicon Valley. And so everybody kind of expected me to also have a very quantitative career. And I was really fascinated by humans and, human experience and why people make decisions the way that they do. And so I found economics in high school, and I loved economics because it was both quantitative, but it also tried to explain human thinking and human understanding. So it was like I thought, the perfect social science for me. And
Yeah.
so I went to college, and I also, when I was in high school, I had to work a lot. My family, just had a lot of financial pressures. And so I, went to Manhattan, every chance that I got for work. And I would see people, dressed up to go to Wall Street. So I really aspired to work on Wall Street. I learned all about investment banking when I was in high school. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go do economics. I'm going to be an investment banker. This is like the perfect career for me. And so I
Wow.
got to college, shot through all of like the economics courses very quickly, actually, to the extent that I had like no more courses to take by my senior year in economics or math, unless I wanted to go do graduate courses at UMass. Um,
Wow.
and I interned for 2 summers on Wall Street with, an investment management firm. And what I discovered is that even though I really liked the work, and I really liked doing the financial analysis and communicating what was going on in the markets to clients and investors, I didn't find a single person that I interacted with on Wall Street where I was like, yeah, I want to be like them when I grow up. And that
Yeah.
really gave me pause. And what I started to discover was that what really mattered to me was to be a person who not just was successful financially or status wise, but someone who feels really fulfilled in what they do every day and where the community of people around me share my values. That is really important to me. And so that was kind of my journey
Yeah.
in college of discovering that.
Yeah. So take me through. First of all, you mentioned this question that you were asking yourself, right? Which is, is anyone here, do I want to be this person in 5 years, 10 years? Which is a very intentional question that not many people ask, but maybe should ask. How did you always ask yourself this, or was this always something that you thought about? Is this something that, you would advise college students now to really think about when thinking of their next career path?
I would definitely advise everyone to ask themselves, what are my values? Not what are other people's values, not what does society value, not what do my parents value, but
Yeah.
like your life is your own, right? And your life needs to be something that you feel truly aligned with. And if somebody else has a different life and you look at their life and you're like, wow, that's not me, that's probably not the that's probably not the trajectory you want to
Yeah.
go in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do advise that people, when they're in, different situations, that they don't just look at the money or the status or, the title. And we can talk about titles, which I completely don't value at all, and I can explain why. Um,
Okay.
don't look at those things. Those are the easy markers, right? Like somebody's LinkedIn profile, their titles, those types of things, the house they have or with the car they have. Those things don't tell you anything about how fulfilled the person is or how happy the person is or how aligned with their purpose they are, right? And those are the things at the end of the day, those are the only things that matter. Nothing else matters.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm so curious now, and I'm going to challenge you a bit in the sense that obviously, like, this sounds ideal, right? To be at a place where you connect with the people, you share the same values as them. That sounds amazing. What I'm curious about is what are some key indicators? How can we tell before we start working there, right? Like, how do we tell in the interview process? How does that look like to know really, okay, this is a place that I could see myself in?
Yeah. So first of all, it's hard. I'm going to admit it is really
Yeah.
hard to do that, especially in an interview process. But one of the things I did when I was interviewing for jobs out of college, because I'd had these experiences, these 2 summers on Wall Street where I was just like, these are not my people and I can't, I don't think I can do this. Is One of the things that I did was I hung out with people. Like I didn't just do the interviews, but I also asked to stay overnight with, and like
Wow.
hang out with the people that, and it was a little bit easier because I was all like management consulting and advertising that I was interviewing for at that point. And so people were very
Okay.
open to that, but I really wanted to like see who are these people, not just what is the work environment and what is the job. Right now, one of the things that I ask people when I interview, and I actually think that people should ask this when they interview, my favorite interview question, especially for product leaders, is what's the thing that you're proudest of? And the
Ooh.
reason I
Oh.
like to ask that question is because it shows me what is the person's value, like what is this person value? What are they proud of, right? Not just what did you accomplish or what was your greatest achievement or, anything like that, but what are you as a
Right.
human proudest of that you've done? So I see their values and then I see like what do they pick? Do they pick the thing that earned the company the most money or do they pick the thing that affected the most people? Do they pick the thing that, created an opportunity for someone else on their team, right? Who may not have had an opportunity before? Like what are they actually
Right.
proud of that they're doing, right? And
Yeah.
so I actually think that one great question as you're going through an interview process is to ask your hiring manager, right? What have they done in their career that they're the proudest of?
Yeah, I
And
love
then
that.
you'll get to
That's
see what
great.
kind of person they are.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the
So,
day, your
okay.
hiring manager help like really frames a lot of your experience at work, right? And if you can see what they value, what they take pride in, you can start to see what your experience might be like working there.
Wow. So, okay, right now you're in this point in your career where you kind of are, everything's a little bit flipped on its head, where you thought, econ, finance, investment banking, and you're learning a little bit more about the environment, the culture. And you mentioned also that it's rooted in your values as a person, right? You're a refugee from Eastern Ukraine. You said you had some financial troubles growing up, and probably maybe that's why you geared towards this, investment banking. You have money. How did all of this come together, and what made you have like the strength to maybe put that away and say, okay, let's see what else is out there. Let's do a new career shift.
So for somebody with my background, and I think probably a lot of people in the world,
Yeah.
the reason why you want money is because you want to feel safe, right? You want to feel like maybe some of us grew up not feeling completely financially secure, right? And so the money represents safety, and a certain high level of money represents safety. And then you start
Yeah.
to realize, is it really the money gives me safety, or is it my self-confidence and my knowledge that I can live on a lot less money and still feel safe? Like, how do I develop the resources and within myself where I resource myself to feel that safety and that self-confidence without having to have the external validation of a large income or a large bank account or some status that, again, all those things can be taken away by external forces, right? Inflation can
Yeah.
wipe away your bank account, right? The economy can tank and you can, lose a lot of your net worth, right? Somebody can take away your job title, right? But if you resource that feeling of safety and self-confidence within yourself, nobody can take that away. And so that's one of the things that I think is truly what I'd ask people to do and to kind of really reflect on is why? Why do they care about the salary? Why do they care about the status? Right? What is that giving them from the outside? And can they find that and can they build that up within themselves? And then of course you need money to like live and I have kids, you have to like
Right.
send the kids to school and pay for things. Um, but
Yeah.
then the question is like, but then how much do you need to feel safe and what are you willing to sacrifice for that feeling of safety? And what are you not willing to sacrifice for that feeling of safety?
So
Yeah. So that was
tell me
like a
now, I
big
know,
turning point.
yeah, and I'm curious, where did this almost, there's a balance of taking a risk, right? And going into a new field and maybe being the only woman in the room, which I'm sure you experienced many times throughout your career, and having that risk, but also holding on to that self-confidence like you talked about and knowing that, okay, I deserve to be here. How do those, have they ever, contrasted and conflicted together that you really had to, remind yourself?
There have been a lot of times in my career where I have taken a sharp left turn and taken a risk. So I'll tell you a
Yeah.
couple of times and I'll tell you like, what that process is and the process of feeling like, oh my God, did I make a mistake or not? And then realizing that everything is always as it's meant to be at the end of the day. Um, after college, I went into advertising at Leo Burnett, and
Okay.
I, rose very quickly. I was in, new business. I was doing new business pitches all over the world, and then I worked with the head of brand planning globally to develop a new brand planning process. And I rose very, very quickly, became a director in marketing again before the age of 25, and
Wow.
you know, was really like doing very well, right, in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And then I realized I wanted to do a PhD in anthropology. So I wanted to go to grad school. And get a PhD in anthropology because I was just like reading a lot of anthropology books. I was traveling a lot all over the world. I was working with a lot of global brand teams, and I realized how important culture was in this whole conversation. I was getting, really fascinated by it. And so, I left basically my career to become an anthropologist. And
Wow.
everybody was like, are you crazy? Like, you're literally going to step out of the working world for 7 years and you will never recover. And I was like, well, maybe, but I really want to do this. I really, really, really want to go to anthropology grad school. and um
Wow.
and it was an incredible experience. I traveled around the world, and then when, at the end, when I was finishing up my dissertation, the question was like, well, now I kind of feel like I have to become a professor. Um, but the world just kind of granted me the opportunity to go into something completely different, which I had never even considered, which was design. And so a recruiter
Wow.
called and she said, hey, IDEO is looking for, a brand designer, and or a designer who like knows about brands, and you've got a brand strategy background. And I said, I literally know nothing about design. Like, you do not want me like anywhere close to design or aesthetics, or like I am not an aesthetic sort of person, right? Like, I don't do
Yeah.
design. And she was just like, no, 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 just go talk to the CEO of IDEO, Tim Brown.
Wow.
So I was like, of course I'll talk to the CEO of IDEO, Tim Brown.
Yeah.
And he and I had the most magical, amazing conversation. um he's still a friend. And then again, my career just like opened up in this, product development through design thinking lens, that like, who knew that anthropology would open a door, to product development, to innovation and product management. Like, nobody could
Wow.
have predicted that. And it was a huge risk that I took. But again, I followed what I'm going to say, like, I followed what my soul was saying, not with my head. My head, right? My rational brain, and everybody who was looking at my career rationally was like, don't do this anthropology thing. I literally had people that I asked for letters of reference from, who I later read their letter of reference, and it literally said, she is making a big mistake by going to anthropology grad
Oh my
school.
goodness.
Like, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So my
crazy.
econ advisor
Okay.
actually wrote the most amazing reference letter. He wrote like I think his first line is like, Tatyana is too smart and talented to waste her life on anthropology. Or something like
Oh
that.
my
It was like
goodness.
amazing.
That's
And
amazing.
but again, my soul was telling me like, you should do this, and my brain was saying it's irrational. You're going to set your life back.
Okay, so basically, following your heart versus your mind, you learned so much from that. I want to now know, going into design, right? A whole new field, and having these people almost really have this belief in you. How was this experience at IDEO? Completely different field, not knowing that you belong. How was that experience?
So there's always, when you go into a new field and everybody around you is an expert in the field and you're not, you have no idea what's going on. I I feel like the best thing you can do is just to really own what you know, and to really own what you don't know, and to lean into your expertise, right? Like, just focus on your strengths. And I feel like when I hear people talk about imposter syndrome, it's because they
Yeah.
think they have to step into a role where they are not qualified or they are not the expert. My advice is not to fake it till you make it at all. My advice is to
Okay.
understand what are your superpowers, and don't try to fake what are not your superpowers. So throughout IDEO, people would say, well, we as designers, and I would always say, well, I'm the non-designer in the room. So, I'm kind of the human behavior specialist, right? And I just always leaned into
Yeah.
that and owned that as who I was. And that's how I think you get away from imposter syndrome, right? Like, don't try to be something that you are not. Don't try to stretch into an area where you really have no expertise or authority. You may learn it over time, absolutely, and then you can step into that role. But know who you are,
Yeah.
and speak from the place where you feel confident. And that is the way I think that people should manage imposter syndrome, right? So stepping in like to this new environment, I was the non-designer. It was I was constantly saying, like, I don't know anything about design. Just like now, a lot of times I get into technology conversations. I used to actually manage an engineering team at AWS, and I would always be like, I don't know anything. Like, I'm not really technical. I don't have an engineering background, so I'm going to ask some really silly
Yeah.
questions, right? And I I feel in my career that that has really helped me, because I don't BS anybody, right? I don't try to make believe I know something that I don't know. Um, and I feel like people really respect that.
I love that. That really speaks to me. And I think I could apply that to where I am right now. I really love that. And I heard this story from you in another podcast, and I want you to tell it again over here, which is, tell me, you've had amazing bosses in your career, and one of them is Leo Burnett. And I believe this is right, but correct me if I'm wrong, obviously. But one meeting you had where you were quiet and you didn't mention something, and he kind of told you after the meeting. I'll let you take it
Yeah.
from here. I think you know
So
what I'm talking about, but it kind of relates to just speaking up. So yeah, give it.
so this was, my very first job, my very first boss, and it was in business development. And the advantage of being in business development is, even as a 23-year-old, I was in meetings with vice presidents, the president, the chief creative officer. Like, it was really like amazing meetings. And I was there to like take notes and coordinate everything. And my first boss at Leo Burnett was T. Scott Edwards, and he was a vice president. And we were in a meeting, and again, I'm sitting there, I'm hearing all the higher ups give their opinions, and I'm taking notes. And then afterwards, I said, "Hey, Scott, this is what I think about the meeting." And he says, "That's a great idea. The next time you don't speak up in a meeting, you're fired." and so and so he just like
Plain and simple.
forced me, right, to speak up in the middle of the room, where there were all of these really powerful people, and I'm 23 years old, and right out of college, and he's just like, "Speak, just speak, or else you're fired," which, that's a pretty good incentive to speak. And that really,
Right.
again, developed, again, what is my expertise, where's my point of view coming from, and how do I not have, there's another piece of imposter syndrome, which is authority syndrome, where you really feel people who have authority in the room, and you try to subvert your own opinions to match theirs, right? Don't do that. Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Own your own opinions, own what you're good at, own your expertise, and speak from it, no matter what your title is. So that was the
I
story
think
there.
it's so I love it. I love that story, and I think it teaches so many lessons. The hard thing is that it is easy to say, but I think in practice, when you are a junior in that role, it becomes much harder to actually be able to speak, right? And I think it does stem from maybe leadership creating this, vulnerable environment. But I think there is couple things at play here, but I think it is so important for at least a junior coming in, or a new, transitioning from a different role, to be able to realize, okay, this is my expertise. I could touch on this. And even like you said, saying, yeah, I don't know this. It might be a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I think all of that, there's so much value that comes with it. So I really appreciate you saying all of it, for sure.
Yeah.
I want to talk now, at IDEO, you then discovered, design, user design, and then going to Salesforce. So all of these experiences that you had, what were you optimizing for at each different career different company that you were approached. So whether it's AWS, Salesforce, and then obviously Nextdoor, how are you thinking of these new stages?
So the way that I think about my career, and this is what I tell everybody in mentoring conversations, you should not
Okay.
optimize for the title. You should optimize for the story that you're going to tell if you take this role. So the title for the role, there are tons of people with like big titles who really don't accomplish very much. I think we all know who they are in organizations we work for. I think we all know there are lots of executives
Right.
who have big titles and don't really accomplish very much. So the way that I think about my career is if I take this role, what is the story that I'm going to be able to tell afterwards? And again, this goes back to, am I going to be able to tell a story that I am really proud of? Because every time
Wow.
I take a job,
So,
I want that next role to be the answer as to what are you proudest of. Now, it may not turn out that way, but like I am imagining something in my mind where like, what can I do that will make me really proud in this next role? And like, I think that at the end of the day, organizations value people who can get impossible and amazing things done. And if you can tell the story that, like, hey, Tatyana enabled our company to do this amazing thing. And, I tell that story, but then I also have somebody in the company who validates that, yes, like I drove this amazing thing. That's the thing that will make you so valuable to the world. And so the reason I left from
yeah.
IDEO to Salesforce is because Salesforce wanted to be like a more design led company and they didn't really know how to do it. And so the role I took was like a really weird title and had nothing to do with really anything that I wanted to do. But I
Yeah.
recrafted it and I talked about and I thought about what could I do if I just got into Salesforce as a senior director of design, knowing what the company wanted to accomplish. And then within a few weeks of coming in to the company, I had Parker Harris, the co-founder and CTO, sit me down and say, "Can you lead this lightning redesign project and reinvent
Wow.
the entire UI of Salesforce?"
And you
And I was like,
and you
"Sure."
had no idea about this going into Salesforce, right?
The project I didn't know about, but the overall ethos, I
Right.
got the feeling, the energy that I got when I was talking to the people of the leadership at Salesforce was that they were really struggling on how to make this transition to being much more, user centric, much more kind of design centric, much more understanding of how to build product experiences, not just technology products. And that energy was the thing that I was like, I can really make a difference here because I know how to do this, right? And I know how to lead this. And as
Wow.
soon as they see it, I just believed that as soon as I got in there, I would be able to do something that they wanted that was really great. And again, within a few weeks, Parker Harris had me in his office being like, okay, we need to like do this lightning experience redesign thing. Can you reinvent all of Sales Cloud? And I was like, maybe, but
Yeah.
like if anybody can do it, I could probably do it. So like leading lightning experience redesign, that again, that was the thing that then set me up to, be one of the leaders of IoT Cloud and build that. And then that leader went to AWS and he knew what I could do. And so he brought me with him to build Honeycode. And again, it's like in the organizations, again, that's my secret sauce. That's not everybody's secret sauce, but find out what is the thing that you want your stories to be about. Mine is about innovation, right? And transformation, transformational leadership. Um, so what is your thing? And what are the stories that will help you
Yeah.
build that reputation for being the world's expert at that thing, at that thing?
Ooh, I love it. I love that. I think, and I could also argue that even early in your career, deciding to go get a PhD in anthropology, that also is like writing your story and it contributes to your story. So I love that. That's awesome.